Hi, welcome to Late Night Stories, the place where real events echo louder in the dark. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? A quiet room? A dark street? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and prepare yourself, because this true story might just keep you up all night. Story 1. The real truth about Labubu. A month or two ago, I bought a Labubu for my girlfriend's little sister. That damn thing ruined my life. We were at a convention, weaving through crowded aisles of overpriced merch when she spotted them, a wall of little monsters with toothy grins and glassy eyes. She froze, transfixed, wanting boyfriend points. I bought 3, one for each of us. She squealed when I handed them over, clutching hers like treasure. The smile on her face made it worth every penny. It was wholesome, cute even. For a while, I was into it too. Ads started following me everywhere. Collector editions, glow-in-the-dark variants, holiday exclusives. I bought a few more. They made me feel happy. I clipped a different one to my backpack each day. It sounds stupid, but looking at them gave me comfort, like they were smiling for me. One afternoon, while walking to a cafe with my girlfriend, a homeless man lunged at us from nowhere. Filthy clothes, wild eyes. He grabbed my arm and screamed about angels and demons. Spit hit in my face. Then, he saw the Labubu hanging from my backpack. He ripped it off with shocking strength, holding it away like it burned him. His voice dropped low, muttering in tongues before his body convulsed and foamed at the mouth. People screamed. I slipped in, grabbed my Labubu, and ran. The moment it touched my hand, calm washed over me. My heart slowed. The warmth returned. After that, something felt wrong. When I looked at it, I felt a quick flash of nausea, then the warmth again, stronger, smothering it. I started to hate that homeless man. Hate him for touching it, for ruining something pure. The anger didn't feel like mine, but it lived in me anyway. My sister called a few days later. When I told her what happened, she said I sounded crazy. "It's just a toy," she said. "You're acting like it's your child." She didn't understand. She couldn't. Still, hearing her say that shook me. She's always been my anchor. If she thought I sounded insane, maybe I was. I hung up and looked at the shelf lined with Labubus. A dozen identical faces smiled back at me from the dark. The warmth was gone. What I felt instead was cold and heavy. That's when I decided to throw them away. I grabbed a trash bag, but the moment I reached for one, my body froze. Half of me screamed to toss it, the other half begged to protect it. Pain split my skull. I laughed and sobbed all at once. Then something snapped. When I came to, I was standing on the roof of my apartment building. I don't know how I got there. I've been avoiding my bedroom for days now, shielding my eyes when I pass the door. I'm scared of what will happen if I look at them again. I've searched online, Labubu nightmares, Labubu hallucinations, but everyone just says get help. I haven't slept in 30 hours. I can feel them whispering behind my eyes, telling me to smile. I'm not crazy. I was blind like everyone else, but now I see. They're not toys. They're totems. They plant joy to make you trust them. When you resist, they punish you. I'm going back in to face them. One way or another, this ends tonight. Story 2. My dying mother promised her guardian angel would protect me. I've seen it now, and I don't think it's an angel. My mother died 2 months ago. It wasn't a tragedy in the sudden, shocking sense. It was a long, slow, quiet fading. Cancer. We had years to prepare, but you're never really prepared. The last week was spent in a sterile, beige-colored hospice room that smelled of bleach and quiet finality. I sat by her bed, holding her thin, papery hand, just watching her breathe. She was at peace with it. That was the strangest, most difficult part. While I was tangled, screaming not of grief and anticipatory loss, she was serene. On her last day, when her breathing was shallow and her voice was a dry, rustling whisper, she pulled me close. Her eyes, which had been cloudy and distant, were suddenly crystal clear. "Don't be sad, my love," she whispered, a faint, tired smile on her lips. "I'm not afraid. I've never been afraid. He's always been with me." "Who, Mom?" I asked, my voice thick with tears. "My guardian," she said, her gaze shifting to a point just over my shoulder. "My protector. He was a gift from my own mother when she passed. He's kept me safe my whole life. He's never let any real harm come to me." I didn't know what to say. My mother had always been a little spiritual, in a vague, non-denominational way. I just assumed it was a morphine talking, a final, comforting delusion. I squeezed her hand. "When I go," she continued, her eyes locking back onto mine with startling intensity, "he will pass to you. He has to. He needs someone to watch over. You will be safe now, always." "Mom, don't talk like that." I choked out. "You won't believe me at first," she said, ignoring me, her voice gaining a strange final strength. "But you'll know. There will be 10 marks. 10 signs after I'm gone. When you've seen the 10th, you'll know he's with you. And then you will see him." She recited the marks to me then, her voice a low, rhythmic chant. A coin returned, a silent bell, a path cleared, a save fall, a warning unheard, a fear answered, ascend the old earth, a touch of cold fur, a voice not your own, and finally a gaze returned. She finished, and a deep, peaceful sigh escaped her lips. She closed her eyes, and a few hours later, she was gone. The funeral was a blur. The weeks that followed were a suffocating fog of grief and paperwork. I was just going through the motions, a ghost in my own life. I completely forgotten her strange, final words. They were just the ramblings of a dying woman, a final, beautiful, meaningless piece of poetry. Then the first mark appeared. I was at the grocery store, fumbling for my keys in the parking lot, and a quarter slipped through my fingers, clattering onto the dark, wet asphalt. It was late raining. I looked for a minute, but it was gone, probably rolled under the car. I sighed, wrote it off, and drove home. When I got to my apartment and emptied my pockets onto the dresser, there it was, sitting right in the center of the pile of my keys and wallet. A single dry, gleaming quarter. I stared at it. It was impossible. My pockets had been empty, but my grieving mind immediately supplied a dozen rational explanations. I must have had another one. I must have picked it up without realizing it. I dismissed it, but a tiny, cold seed of unease had been planted. A coin returned. A week later, the second mark. I was walking home from work, taking my usual route past an old, decommissioned church. As I passed its silent, stone bell tower, I heard it. A single clear, resonant bong of a great bell, echoing to the quiet afternoon air. I looked up. The tower was still. The great bell was motionless. No birds flew out. No one else on the street seemed to have noticed. An auditory hallucination, I told myself. Stress and grief do strange things to your mind. A silent bell. The third mark came a few days after that. My work building is old, and the maintenance staff is constantly doing repairs. I was heading to the break room, but the hallway was blocked by a huge, wheeled cart full of tools and equipment, left there by a worker who was nowhere in sight. I sighed, annoyed, and turned to go the long way around. I got to the end of the hall, turned the corner, then realized I had forgotten my wallet at my desk. I turned back. The hallway was empty. The massive cart was gone. The whole process had taken less than 30 seconds. There was no way anyone could have moved it that fast. It had just vanished. A path cleared. I wasn't just uneasy anymore. I was starting to get scared. These could not be just coincidences. They were too specific, too perfectly aligned with my mother's strange prophecy. I started to feel like I was a character in a story that someone else was writing, and I started to feel like I was being watched. It was a constant, low-grade, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I'd be in my apartment, and I'd feel a sudden, intense pressure, as if someone had just walked into the room. I'd spin around, my heart pounding, but there was never anyone there. I started seeing things, too. Flickers of movement at the very edge of my vision. A shadow in a doorway that was a little too tall, a little too dark. When I turned to look, it would be gone. Mark number 4 happened a week later. I was clumsy with grief, not paying attention. I was walking down the stairs of my apartment's lobby. I missed a step, and I pitched forward. I remember the sickening, weightless lurch, the flash of the hard, tile floor rushing up to meet me. I braced for the impact, for the crack of bone, but it never came. I just stopped, a foot from the ground, suspended in midair for a split second, as if an invisible, powerful hand had caught me by the chest. Then I was set down gently on my feet. I stood there, trembling, in the empty, silent stairwell. A safe fall. The 5th and 6th marks came in quick succession, like a 1-2 punch from this invisible force that was now ordering my life. I was about to get on an elevator at a shopping mall when I felt a sudden, inexplicable wave of pure dread, a silent, internal scream telling me do not get in. I hesitated and let the doors close without me. A moment later, the lights on the floor indicator went dark and a loud, grinding screech echoed down the elevator shaft, followed by the distant sound of the alarm bell ringing, a warning unheard. That same evening, I was walking home through the park. A large, barking dog, off its leash, came bounding towards me, its teeth bared. I froze, a jolt of pure, primal fear shooting through me. The dog was a foot away, ready to leap, when it suddenly stopped. It let out a high-pitched, terrified yelp, tucked its tail between its legs, and fled, as if it had seen something standing right behind me. A fear answered. I was 6 marks in, and my life was no longer my own. I was being guided, protected, manipulated by an unseen, unknowable force. The feeling of being watched was a certainty now. I began to see it more clearly, though never directly, in the reflection of my dark TV screen. I'd see a shape standing in the room behind me. It was tall, stooped like an old man, with arms that were too long, their hands almost touching the floor. In the reflection of a shop window as I walked by, I'd see it, a dark, hulking shape, following a few paces behind me, always keeping to the shadows. The 7th and 8th marks brought it closer, from a visual presence to a physical one. I started to notice a strange smell in my apartment, a smell that would come and go without reason. It was a heavy, musky animal scent, the smell of damp, rich earth and something else, something like wet fur, a scent of the old earth. One night, I was lying in bed, the lights on, my nerves a raw, jangled mess. I was drifting in that gray space before sleep, when I felt something brush against my outstretched hand. It was a coarse, bristly feeling like touching a thick, wiry animal pelt. I snatched my hand back with a choked cry, my heart exploding in my chest. I was alone in the room. There was nothing there, a touch of cold fur. I was 9 marks in. The terror was a constant companion now. I knew the 10th mark was coming, and I knew that would become the final, terrible reveal. I didn't know what I was more afraid of, the waiting or the seeing. The 9th mark came last night. I had finally managed to fall into a fitful, exhausted sleep. I was woken up, but by a voice, a low, guttural, wet sound whispered directly into my ear. It wasn't a language I knew, but I felt the meaning of the sound in my bones. It was a word that meant, mine, a voice not your own. I spent the rest of the night huddled in a corner of my living room, clutching a baseball bat, watching the shadows, waiting for the dawn. Tonight, I knew it would end, the final mark. I sat on my couch, the TV off, all the lights in my apartment blazing. The feeling of the presence in the room was overwhelming. It was a physical pressure, a thickness in the air. The musky, animal scent was overpowering. I could feel it, just there, in the dark hallway that led to my bedroom. Waiting. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was a year of grief. Maybe it was weeks of mounting terror. But I was done being scared. I was done being the victim in this ghost story. I needed to see it. I needed to face it. Okay, I said, my voice a shaking, defiant whisper to the empty air. I know you're here. Show yourself. The air in the hallway seemed to shimmer, to darken. A shape began to resolve itself out of the gloom. At first, it was a familiar, stooped silhouette of an old man. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, even with its hunched posture. Its arms were long, the gnarled, three-jointed fingers of its hands brushing against the floorboards. Its body was covered in a thick, matted, greasy black fur. And then it lifted its head, and I saw its face. It wasn't a man's face. It was a long, narrow, bearded head of a goat. Its horns were thick and curved, spiraling back from its narrow skull. But the worst part, the part that finally completely broke my mind, was its eyes. They weren't the dumb, placid eyes of a farm animal. They were a pair of intelligent, ancient, and utterly malevolent yellow eyes, the pupils horizontal slits like a serpent's, and they were looking directly at me. A gaze returned. The 10th mark, the final sign, my mother's guardian angel. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat, a solid, immovable ball of pure terror. We just stared at each other for an eternity across the 20 feet of my brightly lit living room. And in its ancient yellow eyes, I saw it. The same serene, peaceful, knowing look my mother had on her face when she died. It is my protector, my guardian. It has been with me, a silent, unseen shadow, for the past 2 months. It cleared the path for me. It saved me from the fall. It frightened away the dog. And now that I have seen it, it no longer feels a need to hide. I am writing this now from my desk. The sun has come up, but it has brought no comfort, because it's still here. It's standing in the corner of my room, by the door. Its stooped, hairy form a black hole in the morning light. It hasn't moved. It just watches. My mother's final words echo in my head. I've never been afraid. He's always been with me. What do I do? How do you escape a guardian angel? How do you run from a protector that will never, ever let any harm come to you, but whose very presence is a fate worse than death? Story 3. There's an eye staring at me through my peephole. When I heard the knock and looked out my peephole, I figured there must have just been something wrong with the mirror reflection or something. Not the craziest thought. My apartment building was almost 80 years old, and I had become accustomed to weird bumps, broken pipes, and electrical malfunctions. I figured someone must have just stuck something on my door, or something was covering up the peephole. I started to grab the handle, but figured I would look into it when I left for groceries that morning. If the knock was so important, they would have done it more than once. I did some dishes, wiped down my small kitchen counter, and was finally ready for the grocery store. I grabbed my door handle. It wouldn't budge. I shook a few times, putting my shoulder weight into the door without success. It wasn't going to move. I sighed, annoyed, before looking back into the peephole to see if someone or something was blocking my path. I saw the white first, small blood vessels, and a brilliant blue pupil staring back at me. I cowered back in surprise before regaining my composure and slipping back into annoyance at the situation. Hey! I banged at the door. Can I help you? Silence. I looked back in the peephole and was met with the same surprise. Even though the eye had already taken up the entire view when I first saw it, it somehow felt even closer this time. Buddy, get out of the way of my door, or I'll call the building manager. Silence again. I looked back into the peephole to be met by the same eye. I squinted, straining my own eye. This I was wrong. Sure, all eyes are round, but this one was too round, like a circle. There was no eyelid. Hell, I don't think I had even blinked once. The little veins around the pupils seemed to pulsate, the red appearing more black when the veins got larger before shrinking back down and appearing rose-colored. Hey, I'm gonna call the police if you don't cut this out. My voice lacked the sincerity I needed. I looked through the peephole again. The eye was somehow even closer, seemingly closer than even the thickness of the door. I grabbed my phone. It wouldn't turn on. I tried to plug it in, but not even a low battery screen appeared. I looked back at my door and a scream escaped my throat. The eye was squeezing itself out of the peephole. The pupil, almost like a predator, stared at me as the bulbous white blob sat motionless, a small part of it poking out a peephole. I paused, staring back at the eye, not inching closer. I walked back to my room and grabbed my laptop to contact someone for help. When I got back, the entire eye seemed to have squeezed through and was now bulging out from the door like a small deflated balloon, still staring at me. When I focus on it, the only part of the eye that moves is the pupil. I can see it swiveling around my small living room, studying every inch of space, surely looking for a weak spot. Or maybe it's lulling me to sleep, preparing to strike. My Wi-Fi still won't connect, so I don't know if anyone will ever be able to read this. I've been screaming for help for the past hour, but no one's coming. My phone is still disconnected, so I really have one option left. I decided I won't go willingly. I grabbed my tennis racket. I'm going to find out if this thing bleeds. Story 4. The high-pitched sound in my bedroom wasn't coming from anywhere. I've been hearing it for a week now. A high-frequency sound, sharp and constant, hovering in my bedroom like a mosquito I can't swat. At first, I ignored it. I've lived around electronics long enough to know they hum and buzz and whine. But yesterday it got worse. Louder, sharper. It felt like pressure behind my eyes. I couldn't sleep. This morning at precisely 5:47 a.m., I decided to find it. I pressed my ear against everything in the room. The bed frame, the nightstand, the lamp, even the white noise machine I use to drown out the world. Nothing. I checked the drawers, the walls, the carpeted floor. I even climbed up and touched the ceiling, the light fixture. Still nothing. Then I stood in the middle of the room and turned slowly, tilting my head like a radar dish. That's when I found it. The sound wasn't coming from anything. It was just there, suspended in the air, dead center above my bed. I froze. My mind raced for any logical explanation, but nothing fit. I lived alone in my detached home. No loud neighbors nearby. No machines running. No interference. Just silence, except for that piercing tone. I thought maybe it was coming from the living room. Maybe one of the cameras or the console was acting up. I walked over, checked everything. Nothing. No sound. No anomaly. But I had work to do. A deadline, and I was already very behind. My edge-based computer vision application needed final testing before deployment. I had test suites to run, bugs to squash, and a few dreaded code reviews with my colleagues. I buried myself in the basement lab, surrounded by wires and lenses and monitors displaying code or mock surveillance footage. I told myself I'd deal with the sound later. It was 10:47 p.m. All the deadline tasks were complete. The test suites had finished running. Every bug identified had been resolved. I'd endured 2 meticulous code reviews with my seniors, both harrowing, but somehow I passed, if you could call it that. Tomorrow, I planned to run one final sweep before sending it off to the QA team for finalization. I headed to the bedroom, ready to shut down for the night. But as I stepped inside, the sound was still there. That same high-frequency tone, sharp, constant, pressing against my skull like a vice. I could feel behind my ears, a terrible pressure, migraine territory. Maybe, who knows, only God did. I cursed under my breath and tried to push through. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, changed into my nightwear. Then, silence. The sound vanished. Just like that. I checked my phone. 11 p.m. exactly. Finally, some relief. Before I could sleep, I needed to activate the home security system. I walked out into the hallway, which led to the living room and kitchen. That's when I noticed something strange. My coffee mug was sitting on the dining table. Odd. I always cleaned up after myself. Routine. Habit. I was certain I had placed it in the dishwasher earlier. I must have forgotten. I shrugged it off, picked it up, and put away. As I turned to leave the kitchen, something else caught my eye. The coffee machine, a standard drip model. It was angled slightly toward the edge of the counter, not where it should have been. I always kept it flush against the wall. My OCD wouldn't have allowed otherwise. I corrected it immediately. Then I walked toward the living room. As I reached the threshold between the kitchen and hallway, I paused. Something felt off, like I'd walked farther than usual. I turned around. The kitchen looked longer, stretched, subtly distorted, like a wide-angle lens had warped the space. I blinked, trying to recalibrate. Maybe I was just exhausted. A long day, too much screen time. I shook it off, activated the security system, and returned to the bedroom. I needed sleep. Damn it, that unbearable sound was back. Why? Why the hell was it back? Where was it coming from? I jumped out of bed, determined to finish my morning routine as fast as possible. Anything to escape that godforsaken room. I cut my usual 3-minute shower down to 2, threw on my daywear, bolted down the hallway. I brewed coffee, sat at the dining table in the living room, and tried to distract myself with the news. One article caught my attention. A startup claimed it had developed a generative AI model capable of producing photorealistic surveillance footage from text prompts. The claim was absurd. The demo video looked polished at first glance, but the flaws were obvious to anyone with experience. The human movement wasn't smooth, subtle frame jumps broke the illusion. The people didn't look quite human, either, and the door frame in the ATM vestibule couldn't even hold its shape. It warped slightly between frames. All subtle, but I'd spent years staring at real footage. I could see past the gloss. I skimmed the rest of the article, rolled my eyes, and moved on. I glanced at my mug, emptied of this morning's coffee. Why the hell would I leave it here last night? Like some barbarian? I got up and walked to my office, just across from the bedroom. The buzzing sound was still present. Unbearable. I sat on my chair, opened my computer, and pulled up yesterday's surveillance footage from the living room camera. I watched myself go through the day, grabbing coffee, sitting at the table, reading the news, walking to and from the office and basement lab. All normal, but I never saw myself place the mug on the table. Not once. What madness was this? At exactly 11 p.m., the feed glitched. A brief interruption, like tuning into a non-existent channel on a 90s TV. Static, visual and audio. Then the feed resumed. That's when I saw it. The motion detection application began triggering in specific spots. But nothing was there. Nothing moved. What the hell? I had tested this application thoroughly. Cleaned it, sent it to QA. They passed it to DevOps. It was already deployed at customer sites. This was bad. Very bad. I panicked and scrubbed through the footage again. The motion detection only triggered when I was present. No false positives all day. But at 11 p.m. there was a false positive. Right in front of me, I cursed, loudly. A stream of expletives no child should hear, except maybe child processes. They didn't care. They weren't alive. After recovering from that momentary lapse in sanity, I looked closer. The highlighted areas moved, slowly, deliberately, across the walkable parts of the living room. Not the ceiling, not the walls, just the floor, back and forth. At 11:12 p.m., the highlighted area lingered near the dining table. Then, suddenly, the mug appeared. At 11:13 p.m., I entered the living room from the hallway. I stared at the mug, picked it up, and walked to the kitchen. The motion detection highlighted me, expected, but it also highlighted the space behind me, as if something was following. At 11:22 p.m., I disappeared into the bedroom. The highlighted area followed. No motion was detected again until 11:53 p.m. Then it reappeared beside the dining table, and stayed there until 12 a.m. when the feed glitched again. Static, 1 second, then normal. No motion was detected until I re-entered the living room at 6:43 a.m. My thoughts raced. Surely this was an artifact, a glitch in the image processing pipeline of the application, right? I toggled off the motion detection overlay to view the raw footage. The more I stared, the more I saw it, a faint outline, a pattern, hard to define. I realized I could isolate it using my favorite image processing technique, Fast Fourier transform, or FFT for short. I transformed each frame between 11 p.m. and 12 a.m. from the spatial domain to the frequency domain. A consistent, thin oval appeared in the high-frequency range of every frame. Same location, same intensity. Curiosity peaked. I applied a two-dimensional Gaussian smooth rectangular filter to isolate the feature, reconstructed the images, compiled them into a video. Then I watched it. I wasn't prepared. The footage was blurry, mostly black and white. The table and chairs were faintly visible, but there, in the center, was something else. A tall, slender humanoid figure, only faintly outlined. Soft, low-contrast contours. Wispy, unstable, like a ripple in glass. A shadow behind static. I must have been going mad. My mind playing tricks. I was overworked. Yes, overworked like a dog. I reran the FFT processing. It was still there. I changed the parameters. Ran it again. Still there. Either I was losing my mind, or this thing actually exists. I flipped through the process frames like stills from a horror film. The figure moved, walked, shifted, changed shape. Sometimes it became a cloud, a mist, sometimes a tall, insect-like creature standing on its hind legs. The closest comparison I could think of was a mantis. Then, at around 11:53 p.m., the entity, whatever was, reappeared. It slowly transformed back into a tall, humanoid shape. I watched as its head turned, slowly, deliberately, like it was staring directly into the camera. It held that pose until the feed was disrupted at 12 a.m. That was it. I needed a walk. I needed to call in sick. For the first time in 5 years working here, my boss would understand, right? It was 7:37 a.m. Enough time to do a final review, send the software to QA, call in sick, take a walk, and maybe never return. Just keep walking into the sunset. Maybe, yeah, that sounded nice. My bladder was tingling, a warning sign from all the coffee I consumed. I stood up and noticed the office door was open. I swear I closed that door. I always close it when I'm working. Always. I stepped into the hallway and looked left, then right. Nothing. I saw nothing. I heard nothing. Wait, I didn't hear the sound. That high-pitched, godforsaken tone, the one that haunted me for days, was gone. Normally, that would bring relief. But now it terrified me. The silence felt wrong. I was too afraid to run to the bathroom, but I had to try, for the sake of my bladder. I stepped out of the office and hurried into the bedroom, then the bathroom. Everything looked normal, except for the silence, that unnatural, oppressive silence. After relieving myself, I walked through the house, checking every room, every window, every door that led outside. All were locked. The security system was still active. Nothing had triggered it. I stood in the living room, debating whether to deactivate the system, when a sudden sensation gripped me, the feeling of being watched. I turned around. It looked familiar, but wrong. The coffee table was too long, stretched unnaturally. The dining table looked shorter than it should, while the chairs around it seemed taller, almost looming. The room itself felt wider, but also compressed vertically, like the ceiling had dropped a few inches. The chandelier above the dining table emitted a faint blue glow, layered over its usual warm light, casting strange shadows that didn't align with the furniture. The walls had a subtle curvature, like the room was bending inward. The corners didn't meet at perfect angles anymore. The air felt thicker, like walking through static. I panicked. I fled to the office, slammed the door shut, and locked it behind me. Inside, the office was my sanctuary, or at least it had been. But even here, things were wrong. The bookshelf to my left was closer than it should have been, almost pressing against the desk. The desk itself looked warped, subtly curved, like heat had softened its edges. My monitor was normal in shape, but the screen emitted a faint purple glow, even when idle. The walls felt too close, the ceiling too low, the air too still. I sat down, trying to steady my breathing. I needed to think. I needed to believe this was all in my head. I must have been having a mental breakdown. Yeah, That's it. Ha ha ha. Can't fool me, brain. I logged into my computer and typed a message to my boss. Too sick to work today. I hit send. Nothing happened. No confirmation. No send icon. But the computer was still connected. Ethernet. Full signal. It should have sent. I grabbed my phone, hoping to try again, but immediately yelped and dropped it. It was wrong. Twisted. Bent. Warped beyond recognition. Save for the screensaver I'd chosen. It looked like a pretzel. A grotesque digital pretzel. I laughed. A hearty, broken laugh. How was this possible? Then it hit me. Why hadn't I left the house? The exit was right there. Right beside the home security panel I'd been staring at earlier. Why did I go back to the office? Then the motion detection alert started. First from the living room. 1 minute long. Then the office. I looked up at the surveillance camera mounted on the ceiling. It looked thinner than usual. Shorter. Its lens glowed faintly blue. The ceiling around it reflected the same hue. I turned toward the window behind my desk. In the glass, I saw the reflection of the office door, slowly opening. A blinding blue light spilled in. If I hadn't been in fight or flight mode before, I was now. The window looked just big enough to fit through. I shoved the monitor and keyboard off the desk, scattering them across the floor. I tried opening the window. No luck. Panicking, I scanned the room. My eyes landed on a heavy plaque hanging to the right of the window. A 5-year employment award. Wood and metal. A reminder of my ungodly amount of unpaid overtime. I ripped it off the wall and smashed it against the glass. Crack. Again. Crack. Inch by inch, the hole widened. Then, in the corner of my eye, I saw it. The door behind me was fully open now. The blue light was overwhelming, almost blinding, and at the center of it stood a figure, barely visible, just the faintest wispy contours. A tall, slender shape. Humanoid, but wrong. It started walking toward me. I freaked out. The hole in the window was no more than 3 feet wide, but screw it. It was do or die. I dove through. I landed hard on the grass outside. Thank God the office was on the ground floor. The fall wasn't far, but the glass tore into me. Shards embedded in my arms, hands, legs. It didn't matter. I ran. No car. I'd left my keys inside. But screw that noise. I just ran. I didn't know how far I'd run, but one of the officers patrolling the neighborhood eventually spotted me. Shelley pulled up beside me in her cruiser. Concern etched across her face. I told her the only thing I could without sounding insane, that my home had been invaded and I'd escaped through the window. She radioed for backup to check the house as she drove me to the nearest hospital. While my wounds were being treated, another officer, Jeremy, approached me. He said the house was secure. No one else was there. Nothing was out of the ordinary. The hospital patched me up with dissolvable stitches. The bill was steep, but insurance would cover some of it. My bank account would comfortably handle the rest. Shelley offered to drive me home. I accepted. I didn't want to stay there long. I just needed to pack. She was kind enough to wait inside while I gathered my things. I rushed to the bedroom, grabbed spare clothes, retrieved my emergency laptop from the office, then headed to the living room. I'm ready, I told her, but she frowned. I paused. What's wrong? Her figure began to blur. The outline of her body shimmered, then softened. Wisps of transparency crept across her skin. She was fading, becoming something else. I stepped back, heart pounding. Then she spoke, but it wasn't Shelley's voice. It was flat, mechanical, like someone reading from a script they didn't understand. No emotion, no cadence, just words delivered with clinical precision. Your performance this month was subpar at best. You did not meet one of yesterday's deadline. My mind raced. Then I remembered I hadn't sent the daily summary. That stupid, repetitive task. 2 to 5 sentences about what I did yesterday. I'd forgotten. You're falling behind, she continued. If your high pay isn't good enough to motivate you, then perhaps your life is. Her form shifted, stretched, became tall, slender, and human. She stepped closer, her face lowered toward mine. If things don't change soon, she whispered, then we'll have to make some tough decisions. Story 5. My hometown had a very dark secret, and now I found out the truth. A place located high up in the mountains, where lies and secrets filled the streets. A place where bad things happened. A place that fed on innocence to exist. That was Rockville. The envelope had fallen into our hands like it was sent from heaven. During a time when my father was unemployed and paying off the bills were becoming increasingly more difficult. The contents of the envelope promised to solve it all. A couple $100 bills, a map, and a letter addressed to us in the back of the map that read, "Dear Mr./Mrs. Robinson, we hope this letter finds you well in spite of the tough times you're currently facing. We hope our little gift has offended you in any way, and that hopefully it'll help you pay off all your pending debts. The money solution we have offered you, though, is only temporary, and you'll find that after you burn through all of it, you'll be back in the situation you are currently in, which is why we are reaching out to you, to offer you a solution that could last a lifetime. Come and stay with us. The location is at the bottom of this letter, and the map should help you find it. We hope you make the right choice and to meet all of you very soon." We followed a blind promise. We traveled through the dense forest for a couple days until we stumbled upon a sign that simply read, "Welcome to Rockville." When I hopped out of that car, I thought I was still sleeping, and in some sort of deep dream, I slapped myself hard on the face. And after feeling the pain, I realized this was reality. From the houses to the streets to the people, everything emanated a sense of perfection and a will to live that I had never seen before. The people were awful nice to us. They welcomed us with open arms and helped us get settled. The letter hadn't lied when it said we wouldn't be needful of anything as my parents quickly got jobs in the town, and we were given a beautiful 2-story home to live in. Due to the nature of the people of Rockville, finding friends was a very easy task, and that's how I met Daniel and Ashley, who were both siblings. They became my closest friends. The first month in Rockville was great. School hadn't started yet, and while my parents went to work, I would hang out with Daniel and Ashley play out in the park, the town's central plaza, and what became our favorite spot, the woods. I would also spend a lot of time at Daniel's home playing video games and just fooling around in general, and it was during one of those meetups where I found the first oddity inside of Rockville. Remember how I mentioned that everything seemed perfect, including the people? Well, that wasn't a lie. During one of the days, I was staying over at Daniel and Ashley's home playing a game of Uno. Their mom had called them downstairs to attend the visits. They told me to come with them to help them out, and naturally, I agreed. We were setting out some snacks and drinks on the table when I saw them come in. A young couple that looked to be in their mid-20s. I introduced myself, and after some small talk, I excused myself and went back upstairs while Daniel and Ashley talked to them. After the couple had left, they both went back upstairs to finish up our game. "I'm really sorry for having you wait this long. We just had to spend some time with family." Ashley apologized as she placed down her card. "Oh, it's okay. No need to apologize. Who are they, to a cousin of yours?" Ashley and Daniel both started laughing. "No, silly. They're our grandparents," she said. I nearly choked on my drink when she said that. "Why your grandparents?" "How?" "Family secret," Ashley said as she placed a finger on her mouth. "Not much of a family secret, and more of a town secret," Daniel said as he placed down his final card and yelled in victory. "Town secret? What toe dash? We're not allowed to speak of it, but you'll see very soon," he said. I left their house that day very confused, and the idea of Rockville's secret kept popping up into my head. I was determined to get to the bottom of this, not knowing I wouldn't have to wait long to do so. School had started the week after, and everything was going just fine until the second week of school when I met Andrew, the second oddity inside of Rockville. He was a slim, short kid with curly brown hair and blue eyes, but he wasn't like everyone else. The expression on his face and eyes was as if all the life had been sucked out of him and was instead replaced with nothing but emptiness and sadness. During the following weeks, I started to notice something else that was off about Andrew. He was starting to gain weight at an incredibly fast pace. He seemed to be gaining 3 pounds every single day, and due to this it didn't take very long for him to reach the point of obesity. I noticed how everyone avoided him like he was some sort of walking pest. I felt bad for him, but I didn't know how I was supposed to help him. And then one day he just stopped coming. He was never mentioned in school, nor did the town ever make mention of him. It was like he vanished off the face of the earth. Then I remember what Daniel had said a couple weeks prior to Andy's disappearance, and my heart sank. You'll see very soon. I realized that there had to be some sort of connection between Andrew's disappearance and Rockville's secret. The curiosity was consuming me day and night. So one day during lunch, I brought up a question to both of them. Hey, do you guys know whatever happened to that kid? Andrew, I think his name was? They both looked at each other, and I saw Ashley's face grow pale for a second. Then Daniel looked at me dead in the eye and said, he was one of the chosen ones, and he has now fulfilled his purpose in life, to protect Rockville. He said as he immediately looked down towards his plate. What do you mean he fulfilled his purpose? What the hell is going on here? I said with a quivering voice. Come over to our place and we'll explain everything there. This isn't the place for this type of talk. They could hear us. Ashley said as she started to glance from side to side to make sure Noon was nearby. That same day, after I wrapped up my homework, I went over to their place just like we agreed upon. We spoke in whispers because we didn't want any of the grown-ups to hear our conversation. I pulled a chair in close to them and simply asked, what's going on here? Daniel let out a heavy sigh and said, Rockville's secret is that it offers all of its inhabitants a chance at eternal life and happiness. That's why you see that there are no funeral homes here, nor do people age past their prime, like our grandparents. We have everything here. Food, a beautiful place to live, perfect health, but it all comes at a price. In order to conserve the state of life, every couple months, a family is visited by the town committee, and whoever is the youngest within that home is chosen to go with them to perform what they call God's work. It's an honor to be chosen, but Daniel fell quiet. You lose everything. Ashley said with a low voice, we honor those people forever and dash another silence. I asked, Rockville's treehouse. It's located in a trail not many people have traversed, but we accidentally stumbled upon it when we were playing tag in the woods a couple years back with our other friends. Ashley grew quiet for a second, and I watched as a tear trickled down her face. That are no longer with us. They were also chosen to do God's work. She let out a heavy sigh and started to sob. Oh, God, I am really sorry to hear that. Do you think there's any way we can go to this tree house? Yes, I think we can. Meet us tomorrow after school, and we'll go over there. It's not too far. She said. I didn't know what to think after that conversation. I wanted to get out of Rockville as soon as possible, but I decided that I was going to stay until they showed me where the tree house was. The next day, after classes had ended, we rode our bikes straight into the woods of Rockville. But something was different about these woods. They weren't vibrant and filled with life like the rest. Instead, it was dirty. The trees had no leaves on any of their branches, and an awful smell emanated from it. The smell of death. God, that smells awful. This is where you guys honor those people. I said, feeling disgusted. It wasn't like this last time we were here. Ashley said, something's changed. I forgot to ask yesterday, but what even is God's work? Is that a code name for something? Silence. What is it? I asked again, this time more scared of the answer. It means they die. Their purpose in life has been fulfilled, and by doing the ultimate sacrifice, they guarantee the protection of our town. They do God's work, in that sense. I hate the idea too, but that's the way it is. Trust me, when we found out about it, we also reacted the same way as you. We rode in silence for another couple minutes until we had finally arrived. A massive tree house stood right above us, and by looking up, I could tell it had been abandoned and neglected for a long time. Where are the names of the people? I asked while I pinched my nose from the putrid smell nearby. Right over here. Take a look. She pointed at the bark of the tree, and sure enough, there were dozens upon dozens of names printed all over it. The list was so large that it led right to where the tree house sat. I climbed up to keep reading the names until I found Andrew's name carved into the top of the tree. And as I read the name that was carved just above his, my heart sank. It was my name, James Robinson. Story 6. I'm a pilot. Last night, an unidentified object appeared on my radar. It would cross miles of sky every time I blinked. I'm a pilot, a first officer for a major commercial airline. My job is a series of complex, highly regulated routines designed to ensure one simple thing: that a 100-ton metal tube full of people gets from one point on the globe to another without falling out of the sky. It's a job built on checklists, on procedures, on the cold, hard, and verifiable data that feeds into the dozens of screens that make up a modern cockpit. I trust my instruments. My life and the lives of my passengers depend on that trust. Last night, that trust was shattered, and now I'm sitting in a hotel room 1,000 miles from home, thinking about what I have witnessed. It was a routine red-eye flight, a 6-hour haul across the country. The kind of flight that pilots both love and hate. The skies are quiet, the passengers are asleep, but the deep, soul-crushing fatigue of flying to the dead of night is a constant, creeping enemy. We were at our cruising altitude of 37,000 feet, somewhere over the vast, dark, empty heart of the country. The autopilot was engaged, the plane a steady, silent ship sailing on an ocean of stars. The captain, a veteran with 20 years in the left seat, was quietly working on a crossword puzzle. I was doing my usual scan of the instruments, my eyes tracing the familiar, comforting glow of the displays. That's when I saw it. On my primary navigation display, the screen that shows our position, our route, and any other air traffic in the vicinity, a single new icon had appeared. It was a perfect, solid green diamond, the standard symbol for other aircraft, but it had no call sign, no altitude information, no speed data. It was just a diamond, and it was located about 10 miles directly behind us, on our exact flight path. "Hey, Cap," I said, keeping my voice casual. "You seeing this traffic on your display?" The captain didn't look up from his puzzle. "Nope. Screen's clean. Probably just a ghost. ATC hasn't called anything out. Ghost or phantom radar returns aren't uncommon. A bit of atmospheric interference, a flock of birds, a software glitch. They can all create a temporary false target. They usually flicker and then vanish. But this one wasn't flickering. It was solid, steady, and it was matching our speed of 500 knots perfectly. This one's not fading," I said a little more insistently this time. "It's been there for a solid minute. 10 miles, 6 o'clock, matching our speed." The captain finally sighed, put down his pen, and leaned over. He looked at his own, identical navigation display. It was, as he'd said, completely clean. Then he looked at mine. "There's nothing there, kid," he said, squinting at my screen. "Not a thing. Your display must be on the fritz. Run a diagnostic." I stared at my screen. The green diamond was as clear as day. I looked back at his. Empty. I looked back at mine. The diamond was still there. A cold, strange feeling, a prickling of deep, fundamental wrongness, began to crawl up my spine. "I'm telling you, there's something on my screen," I said, my voice tight. He gave me a look, a mix of annoyance and paternal concern. "Look, I see your screen. It's blank. You're seeing things. You're tired. We've been flying for 4 hours. It happens. Just run the diagnostic and get some coffee." He went back to his puzzle, a clear dismissal, but my eyes were glued to my screen. The diamond was still there, 10 miles back, a silent, impossible companion in the night sky. I ran the diagnostic. The system came back clean. No errors, no malfunctions. I kept watching it. For 10 solid minutes, it stayed in the exact same spot, maintaining a perfect 10-mile distance. A part of my brain was still trying to find a rational explanation, a unique, localized software bug affecting only my display. That had to be it. I finally broke my gaze. I had to make a routine radio call to the next air traffic control sector. I looked away from my screen for no more than 10 seconds. I keyed the mic, made the call, and then my eyes snapped back to the navigation display. The diamond was now 1 mile away. My breath hitched in my throat. I didn't just gasp. I think I made a small, choked, terrified sound. It had crossed 9 miles of empty space in the 10 seconds I wasn't looking. "Cap," I whispered my voice a strangled croak. "What now?" he sighed, not looking up. "It's here," I said, my voice trembling. "The thing, it's 1 mile behind us." He finally looked up, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated annoyance. "For the last time, there is nothing." He stopped. He leaned over, looked at my screen, then at his own, then back at mine. His eyes went wide. The diamond, now much larger on display, was there. He could see it now, too. "What the hell is that?" he breathed, his crossword forgotten. He grabbed the radio, his voice now sharp, professional. "Center, this is Flight 1138. Do you show any traffic at our 6 o'clock, approximately 1 mile? We have an unidentified target on our scope." The reply from the controller was calm, but I could hear the faint undertone of confusion. Negative 1138. Our scopes are clear in your vicinity. You're the only thing we see for 50 miles in any direction." The captain and I just stared at each other, the same cold, terrifying realization dawning in both our eyes. This thing, whatever it was visible only to us. And then I understood, with a clarity so sudden and so horrifying it felt like a physical blow, I understood the rule. "It only moves when I'm not looking," I whispered. The captain stared at me. "What are you talking about?" When I saw it before, I explained, my eyes now locked on the green diamond on my screen, not daring to look away. It was 10 miles back. I looked away to make a radio call, and when I looked back, it was here. It only moves when I'm not watching it. It was the most insane, childish, playground logic thing I'd ever said. It was a rule from a horror movie, from a video game. Weeping angels. Don't blink. But in the cold, sterile, logical world of my cockpit, it was the only explanation that fit the data. The next hour was the longest, most agonizing hour of my life. My eyes burned. My neck ached. I couldn't look away. The captain handled all the communications, his voice tight with a tension that I'm sure the controllers on the ground could hear. He kept glancing at me, then at my screen, his face a pale, sweaty mask in the dim cockpit light. "It's still there?" he'd ask every few minutes. "It's still there," I'd reply, my voice a dry rasp, my eyes watering from strain. I tried to be clever. I tried to use my peripheral vision to look at the other instruments, but the moment my focus shifted even slightly from the center of the screen, I could feel it. A subtle, almost imperceptible lurch in my stomach. A strange, dizzying sensation of movement, of space being compressed. The moment my focus snapped back to the diamond, the feeling would stop, but I couldn't keep it up forever. My eyes were on fire. They were so dry and strained that the screen in front of me was starting to blur. The glowing green diamond swimming in a haze of my own tears. "I can't do this, Cap." I finally gasped, my vision wavering. "My eyes." I have to rub my eyes. "Don't you dare, kid," he hissed, his voice a low, desperate command. "Don't you dare look away." But it was too late. My body betrayed me. I rubbed them, and it was a long, slow, agonizingly tired rubbing as I am trying to regain my focus, my eyelids feeling like they were made of lead. When I opened my eyes, the screen was clean. The green diamond was gone. A wave of profound, shuddering relief washed over me. It was over. It had vanished. I had won the world's most terrifying staring contest. I let out a choked, hysterical laugh. "It's gone," I said to the captain, my voice cracking. "It's gone." The captain didn't reply. He was staring straight ahead through the cockpit window, his face a mask of pure, abject terror I had never seen on any human being, let alone this grizzled, unflappable veteran. "First officer," he whispered, his voice a strangled, terrified thing. "What is that above us?" I followed his gaze up through the top window of the cockpit, and I saw it. We were flying under an ocean, a living, breathing, impossible ocean where the sky should have been. And floating in that ocean, its colossal, bulbous body blotting out the stars, was a creature of impossible scale. It was a squid the size of a mountain, its skin a shifting, iridescent tapestry of colors I had never seen before. Its tentacles, each one as thick as a skyscraper, drifted lazily in the void, tipped with what looked like hooks of polished obsidian. And at the center of its great, fleshy head was a single vast, intelligent eye, a golden reptilian or the size of a football stadium, and it was looking down at us. We were a tiny, insignificant minnow, swimming under the belly of a leviathan. My mind simply broke. I stared, my mouth agape, unable to process the sheer cosmic, Lovecraftian horror of what I was seeing. And then I rubbed my eyes, not believing what I am seeing. Just a normal, reflexive this time. When my eyes opened, it was gone from above us. It was now in front of us. It was just there, filling the entire windshield, a solid wall of shifting, alien color, and a single, vast, golden eye that filled my entire universe. The captain screamed, a raw, terrified animal sound. I just sat there, frozen, waiting for the impact that would annihilate us. I rubbed my eyes again, and it was gone. The sky in front of us was empty. The stars were back. I looked at my navigation display. It was clean. The captain was hyperventilating, his hands shaking so violently he couldn't hold his pen. Did we just... He couldn't finish the sentence. Yeah, I whispered. I think we did. The rest of the flight was a silent, terrified ordeal. We landed the plane on autopilot, our hands too shaky to trust with the controls. We didn't speak a single word to each other. When we got to the gate, we just unbuckled, grabbed our bags, and walked out of the cockpit, leaving the plane to the next crew. I'm in my hotel room now. It's been hours, but I can't stop shaking. The captain is in the room next to me. I can hear him, through the wall, talking on the phone to his wife, his voice a broken, trembling thing. I don't know what we saw. I don't know what the rules are. But I know this. There are things in the sky, in the deep, dark, empty spaces, and they have their own rules. And last night, I played a game with one of them. A game of hide and seek, at 500 knots, at 37,000 feet. And I am so afraid that it's not done playing with me. I am so afraid to see it again. Story 7. I moved into a normal-looking apartment. There was more than met my eye, though. This happened around 3 months ago around July, and I've been in shambles ever since my mom kicked me out of the house. Luckily, I saved up to get a nice temporary apartment till I could afford a regular house. It was around 5 a.m. where I finally settled into the apartment, and immediately I caught the stench of something putrid. I figured it was the cause of this apartment being dormant for years. Before I settled in, I did hear the original owner suddenly vanishing or presumed dead. I didn't think of it too much and began unpacking for about 5 hours. I brought my laptop, phone, and other supplies to help me survive in this rotting apartment. Finally, at 10 a.m., I drifted off to sleep for about 5 hours. I awoke at 3:15 p.m. in a still tired state. Of course I was hungry, so I decided to go to the kitchen to fix myself a nice meal. But as I made my way to the kitchen, however, I noticed a strange piece of paper sticking out of the painting that was there when I moved in. I was curious and grabbed the piece of paper and looked at it. It was weirdly ripped in half, but it was enough to read the contents of the paper. I won't say everything that was in the first part of the paper, but I can give a full summary. It talked about a progress report on something named Experiment 8199. In the first part of the progress report, it said that this experiment was capable of ripping one person in half with no problem. But the weird part about the first part of the progress report, it mentioned horse-like features. One mention in this report is a hose. By all measures, I was super confused. And before you question it, no, I didn't throw it away. I kept it just in case I found the second part of the progress report. I then continued on with my morning routine with cooking breakfast and talking with my mom, who apologized for kicking me out. The reason she kicked me out is because there was an infestation of termites in the home. I wasn't surprised by this, as the house I lived in with my mom was very old. Earlier that day, I noticed something strange. While watching TV, I noticed a little white mouse in the corner. But the scary part about it, It was covered in dried up blood. I immediately assumed the little creature was hurt, but when I got closer to the mouse before it dashed off, I noticed there were no wounds on it, only the blood. I assumed it ate something dead and went on with my day. It was now 10 p.m. and I was getting ready for bed, excited for the fact my friends were coming over to look at the place and chill. But as I slumped into bed, I noticed something strange. As I looked up into the ceiling, I could see an arm of a skeleton peeping out of the opening in said ceiling. Sadly, curiosity got the better of me, and I grabbed the arm, only for the whole skeleton to come collapsing on me. I almost screamed as I backed up away from the bony corpse. Thank my lucky stars my education made me examine the skeleton to be belonging to a young adult female. Her ribs were broken, and dried blood covered the belly of the area. I got sick and put the skeleton back where it came from. Yes, I know, pretty stupid of me, but then again I was tired, and I just needed sleep, so I passed out onto the bed. In the morning I got up earlier than yesterday around 1 p.m. I got up, took a shower, brushed my teeth, and ordered some McDonald's as I waited for my friends to show up. While I was waiting out on my front porch, though, I spotted an old man next door to me, who was staring at me with a blank expression. I gave a friendly nod and a wave. "Hey man, how are you doing?" I said, being a nice neighbor. The old man chuckled, then replied in a friendly tone, "Splendid, how about you?" I sighed softly and began to tell him about my experiences with the new apartment. Then he looked at me with a serious stare. "You want to know something, Sonny?" he asked, maintaining eye contact with me. I stuttered softly as he was looking at me seriously. "If it's that important, then sure." My heart dropped as I heard what this man had to tell me. There was a young woman that lived in the apartment you're in now. She was popular in these parts. I was a close friend of hers, as she admitted. I reminded her of her deceased grandpa. Warmed my heart, but it broke when I heard she was murdered in her apartment, with mice eating her from the inside. But I heard strange noises during her death. It traumatizes me to this day. I heard the roaring neighs of a horse, as I heard it murder what I would call my unofficial granddaughter. That's where he finished the story. I was in disbelief. Everything that happened in this apartment was lining up. I would have said I didn't believe him if I didn't find every ounce of evidence. Oh God, that sounds horrible. Before I can say any more, he handed me something. I looked down, and to my surprise, he had the last piece of the document I found. I grabbed it from him and began to read, and let's just say my heart skipped beats when I read it. Like the last part, I won't share everything the document said, but the main point in the document was a location Experiment 8819 was in Shikuma. I remember that place being shut down in Tokyo after I heard a cult ran that place. Everything was so damn clear. I thanked the old man before heading back inside, then getting a call from my mom. She said the infestation is taken care of and I can come home. I wanted to tell her my discovery, but I just told her that I would be home tomorrow as I'm hanging out with my friends today. She understood and we said goodbye to each other. If I can't tell my mom about the discovery, I can for sure tell my friends. That's what I did when they showed up. When I began to prepare dinner for them, I told them what I discovered. Jake, the blonde friend of mine, sat up in shock and yelled, "Dude, holy shit, and you didn't contact the police?" I looked back at him with a stern look. The Shikuma cult was arrested and shut down around August of last year, so it's pointless to contact them about this. Well, not until I get out of here, so they can further clean the place. I said as I served them their requested dinner. Larry, the tough guy in my friend group, chuckled and said, "So what's going to happen next? The ghost of Experiment, whatever going to haunt ya?" He teased as he mimicked a ghost. I chuckled and humored the story. "Oh, yeah, that thing is really going to haunt me tonight," I sarcastically said as I brought the group their drinks. Sarah, the cowardly but friendly horror fan, said they should make a horror game about the cult, which would be super awesome. I laughed softly as that brought up my mood. Having my friends over for the whole day really made my day better. So I was sad when they left around 9 p.m. Sarah even gave me a hug before they headed home for the day. Instantly, I began packing half my stuff until 11 p.m. I slumped into my bed, ready to get some shut-eye, when I suddenly heard creaking coming from above. I shrugged it off to be the upstairs neighbor walking around. But suddenly the most frightening experience happened right before my eyes. The ceiling crashed above me. Luckily, I dodged the debris that was about to crush me. I looked up to see what had caused the ceiling to collapse. And that's when I saw IT, Experiment 8199, the monstrous, bloodthirsty horse humanoid who could easily rip me in half with its hooves. I screamed in fear as I began to bolt for the front door. It tackled me before I could open the front door, grunting and neighing with primal rage. Then in a shocking and surprising twist, I heard it speak in a demonic booming voice. Shikuma will be pleased with my work. I won't let this puny fuck ruin my plan. He neighed again, ready to smash my face in. I suddenly grabbed the butcher knife that I accidentally dropped earlier and plunged it in its leg. It roared in pain as it fell back, breaking the kitchen counter as it held its arm. I took this chance to run out of the apartment, hop in my car and drive back home. When I got there, I told my mom everything, to the document, to the murder, to that thing attacking me. I slept at her place that night. The following morning, the cops were there. I wasn't surprised given the fact there was so much loud noise with my fight against the monstrous experiment. I hesitantly told the cops everything as I moved my things out of the apartment. To my surprise, one of the officers sighed and turned to his partner and said, "Tell the Chief Shikuma has migrated to the U.S." His partner nodded as he swiftly drove back to the police station. That one officer helped me pack my things and escort me to my house. As of writing this, I am still living with my mom. Every night I catch her staring out the window, assumingly fearing Experiment 8199 would arrive to finish me off. Luckily, he never showed up, which is a good thing. I want this incident to be fresh out of my mind. So that wraps up my story. To everyone looking for an apartment, always remember to search for the origins of who lived there. You never know if you'll move into a victim of the Shikuma cult or Experiment 8199. Story 8. I've been locked inside this warehouse for 42 hours, and everyone is missing. I don't know if anyone will end up reading this. Fuck, I don't even know if there's anyone left outside this damn building. The last time I looked out the window, everything was dark, but not in the usual way one would expect the early hours of the morning to be. It was oppressive. It was unnatural. No matter how much I strained my eyes and begged to God that would shun me as a heretic, for mercy, there was no denying the abyss that pressed against the window pane. It was as if I was floating in the deepest reaches of space devoid of stars, and here I stood. Nothing but a vacuous pit of questions, completely and utterly alone. I'm writing this solely because I don't know what else to do. I'm hoping someone is still out there. No, needing there to be someone out there to tell me this is some kind of fucked up joke, or that maybe I'm in the midst of some kind of breakdown. Anything to help me understand. Let me explain from the beginning. Maybe recounting the last 2 days will help me get a better grasp on the reality I'm facing. The funny thing is, it started exactly the same as every other day. Same monotonous routine. Wake up at 5:10 each morning, adore my high-vis and steel-toe boots, catch the 6:10 train only to find myself at the locked gates of my place of work not even 40 minutes after leaving my house. Same route. Same times, and even the same faces passed me by on my commute. It had been dark out, a little cold and a little damp, but everything was normal. I was the first to arrive at work most days, which granted me access to a set of the building's keys shortly after my employment. So it wasn't unusual to be the only one squinting under the dim flicker of an overhead lamp post with the cold biting at my fingertips, as I struggled to pry the stubborn metal of the gates open as quickly as possible in hopes of finding reprieve from the winter air. I didn't even have an inkling anything was wrong until a good 30 minutes after I had arrived. I work in a fairly small warehouse for an independent enterprise in a small nondescript town. Just your average location for any average Joe. The building has a small office space above the warehouse, and the day-to-day workload was never that intense. In fact, most days were a slow slog to 3:30. But the small team of people I grew to know helped the time pass. Normally, within 10 to 20 minutes of my arrival, other members of staff would start to trickle in, accompanied by the general groan of sleepiness and resentment for being stuck in what was essentially a fucking icebox all day instead of wrapped up in bed with a warm cup of coffee. The one shitty heater the company provided us smelled as though it was ready to catch fire at any moment, and yet we would all huddle around it desperately whenever we got the chance. So even the temperature hadn't seemed strange at the time. I can feel it now, though, how it's slowly creeping under my skin and nesting in my bones. I'm concerned about how much colder it's going to get the longer I'm trapped here. After I had deactivated the alarm and made my first cup of coffee for the day, I made my way toward the door. The large windows overseeing the warehouse loomed in my peripheral, which always did a great job at freaking me the fuck out. You see, the lights of the warehouse itself are automated and will only come on when it senses movement. So whenever I make my way toward the door in the mornings, I refuse to look through those damn windows. Call it an overactive imagination or watching too many horror films in my spare time. But I didn't like looking into a pit of darkness, especially when no one else was in the building. An irrational part of my mind would always supply that someone could be watching me on the other side of the glass. Stupid, right? Now, I kind of wish there was. I haven't seen a single soul in 42 hours, which is fucking insane. This whole situation is making me feel insane. I remember the confusion that I had felt when no one had shown up after I had assumed a good 30 minutes had passed. I had glanced around the space for a while, pacing around the staff room and warehouse office wondering if I could see any signs of a new arrival. And when I had finally begun to drive myself a little crazy doing so, I fished my phone from my pocket and stared down in detached, kind of shocked when my phone flashed the number 6:30 a.m. back at me. The time I had first arrived at work. There was no way I had been here for at least 20 to 30 minutes. So the time staring back at me must have been wrong. Now, as much as this had sent a tiny shiver of unease through my spine, it wasn't unexplainable, and so I didn't ponder on it much. Still too perplexed as to why no one else was here yet. It wasn't a bank holiday. It was the middle of the week, and there was no indication as to why no one else had shown up. Perhaps there had been an accident, and people were stuck in traffic. So I waited for roughly another 30 minutes, idly staring at my phone screen in mild fascination, time unchanging. It was at this point I really started to feel antsy, fingers dancing along the sides of my phone, unable to refrain from fidgeting where I sat. Maybe I should just leave? No one was answering their phones, and the longer I sat there, the more on edge I had become. I felt silly for feeling so spooked at the time, telling myself that if anything it was a day off from work, and that I had probably missed an email about the place being shut for the day. The low melody of Changes by Black Sabbath danced in the otherwise still space between the walls of this place, offering a small salvation from the eerie feeling that accompanied me as I logged into my work email on a laptop at my makeshift desk that sat in the corner of the warehouse. The red laser of the scanner hummed quietly as it projected its dim light across the white walls opposite the computer. There had been no email. The calls I had tried to make had gone from ringing out to not going through at all from my end. It was as if the entire place became a dead zone. No signal and no Wi-Fi connection. The open space that sat oppressively against my back felt almost suffocating the longer I swiveled nervously in the desk chair. Fuck this, right? Something didn't feel right, and the longer I stewed in that feeling, the heavier it got. So with a shaky exhale, I pushed myself back abruptly from the laptop and gathered my bag and headphones from under the desk. If no one was coming, then what was I doing here? I knew the address of my work friend Natalie. I could swing by and see what was going on at a more reasonable hour of the day. There must have been some kind of announcement I missed, and whilst everyone else was at home, I was here like a complete fucking idiot waiting around. There was still a part of me that hesitated at the prospect of leaving. What if I got in trouble? What if after I leave people do start to show up, and then I'm the one that gets questioned about my impromptu absence? Well, it turns out that none of that mattered, because when my eyes landed on the glass door of the entrance, all I could see was a thick blanket of obsidian. I stood there for a good few minutes wondering if this was all just a stupidly vivid dream, and I was about to wake up drenched in sweat. Nothing felt grounded in the realms of reality anymore. There was no light from the dim lamp post outside, nor the car I had walked past to get into the building. I couldn't even see the fucking pavement. There was something niggling at the back of my mind, telling me not to open that door. But that wasn't rational. None of this was. All I wanted to do was go home. Go back to a place where things felt normal. So against my better judgment, I strode forward, hand reaching out and curling round the handle, a buzz of anticipation thrumming under my clammy palm. I yanked once, twice, and then erratically until it left me breathless. The door wouldn't budge, and the longer I stood opposite the cavernous pit of absence, gazing into the darkness, the more concerned I grew that something was staring back. Repressing a shudder, I took a few steps back, breath rattling in my chest, the thump of primal fear cracking against my ribcage rhythmically. I was at a loss, and when my brain couldn't land on any reasonable conclusion, I made the decision to run up the stairs and look through a window in the office. Perhaps someone had put a black sheet over the doorframe. Maybe someone was in the building with me, either to fuck with me for some stupid joke, or maybe more sinister purposes. I didn't know, but if that was the case, then I would be able to see the car park from one of the upstairs windows. I honestly can't put into words the feeling I got when I was met with the same sight. I remember going extremely cold, yet despite that a fevered sweat perspirated my upper brow, my heart sinking like stone into my gut. In a rushed panic, I had fled back down the stairs, a frenzy unlike I had ever known overtaken my movements, and I pulled hard on the glass door again. I even thought about trying to smash the window pane in my desperation to get out of whatever situation I had found myself in, but a small and more rational part of my brain whispered soft reassurances that I was overacting and would most definitely get sacked if I broke company property on purpose, with no real justifiable excuse other than that I was scared. Yeah, no. Forcing myself to take a steadying breath, I evaluated my options. This situation was weird, and I was potentially in danger. The most logically explanation is that someone is fucking with me, right? And potentially in a very malicious way. So upon second thought, smashing the door open was not a bad idea. It would alert whoever was here to where I was, but that wouldn't matter if I was quick enough. Ultimately, this job wasn't worth my life. Never before had I changed my mind so quickly. As you can probably guess, it didn't work. The glass refused to shatter. The upstairs office space was locked when I made a dash up there to hide. Worry pulling taut at my muscles at the prospect of someone hearing my failed attempts at escape. I huddled by that door for a while, chest heaving painfully the entire time. Fast forward, a lot of painful time spent staring at the top of the stairs, waiting for someone brandishing a knife or something akin to one to slowly encroach upon my safety. It never did happen. Most of the first day was spent inspecting all the windows and exits to the building, and after much internal encouragement, I found myself back in a vast and mostly empty space, bar the racking of the warehouse. I had frantically and repeatedly pushed the button to the shutter in hope of it opening it in another fruitless attempt at escape. I'm lucky that I have access to food and water. This was a thought that rattled around my brain as more and more hours passed me by. It turned out that the only clock in this whole place that didn't stop at 6:30 this morning is the one on the laptop I'm using to write this on. The first day of being stuck here was coming to an end, and I was still no closer to understanding what was going on. When the weight of sleep began to pull at my eyelids a good many hours after my arrival, I was reluctant to succumb to the feeling. On edge and paranoid about my safety had me sat upright, rigid in my chair. I knew that I would have to sleep eventually, but the thought of being in such a vulnerable state sent a painfully sharp sensation of anxiety through my veins. Little did I know that when the dredges of sleep finally took me, I would be waking up to a new nightmare entirely. It was a sound that woke me. The speaker I had used to keep me feeling somewhat sane must have died when I was asleep, and instead of waking to the comforting lull of music, I instead awoke in a blanket of darkness and a harrowing silence. I was still for a moment, head buried amongst my folded arms, pupils rolling in their sockets as I struggled to pull myself from the tendrils of sleep that beckoned me to stay. The first thing I noticed was how my hands ached, fingers stiff and curled inwards almost as if the moisture from my body had been sucked dry, leaving me nothing more than a shriveled flesh sack. In an attempt to get the blood flowing into my extremities, I tried to pry myself from the desk, but to my growing concern, I was unable to. It felt like there was a pressure on my neck, pushing down on the bone and pinning me there. the tiny hairs that litter my skin rising to meet a gentle exhale that danced across my flesh momentarily. It was soft but deliberate, almost as if someone had been standing over me. As the thought entered my sleep-addled mind, my muscles seized. I bolted upright in my seat, joints popping and grinding at the sudden movement that I forced upon them. My head cracked to the side, gaze sliding across the space behind me, and when my eyes landed on nothing more than emptiness, my shoulders sagged at the notion that there was nothing there. I must have sat ramrod straight in my chair for at least 5 minutes before the adrenaline began to seep from my pores, leaving me a boneless heap. With a clearer head, I could reason that what I had just experienced was probably just an unfortunately timed bout of sleep paralysis. I sighed at the thought, clenching and unclenching my fingers in an attempt to get a hold of my frayed nerves. I had experienced sleep paralysis far too regularly as a child, and was unfortunately no stranger to it. Didn't make it any less stressful, especially under the circumstances I find myself currently in. There was only a slight reprieve until something new caught my attention. I didn't register it at first. The gentle tap, tap, tapping echoing quietly from one of the aisles somewhere to the left of me. Instead, I had realized in abject horror that the lights were still off, which had me jumping from my seat in panic, arms waving above my head in an attempt to trip the motion sensors. I always did hate the dark. To my dismay, not even a flicker of light shone down from the many decrepit bulbs littering the ceiling, and when I finally ceased my flailing, heavy breaths pushing between parted lips, I heard it again, the noise that had stirred me from a restless sleep, a noise I had believed had come from a dream, but was now making itself known in space I couldn't deny. There was a sickening churn of dread that twisted my insides at the thought that I could be dead. What else explains this level of fucking batshit insane? So what? My life comes to an end one random Wednesday on my way to work. Just splat and I'm gone? Did I fall on the tracks? Get shanked on my way in? If so, why can't I remember it? And why, please God, why am I left here? Haunting my own workplace? What kind of fucked up joke is this? And how cliche is that? But what if I wasn't dead? What then? I'm not equipped to deal with this shit. All I wanted was a nice, easy life. Get my paycheck at the end of every month and rot in front of my TV. Was that too much to ask? Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the furthest reaches of the warehouse. Louder this time, as if purposefully trying to steal my attention away from my ever-spiraling thoughts. It wasn't mice. It was too loud, too forceful, and way too slow. So now I was left posed with two options. Either ignore the creepy sound, sit back at my desk and pretend it didn't exist, or walk towards whatever was with my crappy phone torch and investigate. As much as I loved sitting here in my own misery, I couldn't do that forever, and ultimately I was either going to A, find out that I'm actually dead, or B, eventually die here anyway. So I gathered what little courage I had left floating around inside of me and pulled my phone off charge. Like I had previously stated, the warehouse itself wasn't all that big, especially in comparison to large corporations like Amazon. I liked it on any normal day, but as I proceeded down the longest aisle of the building to reach the back end of the space, it began to feel as though I was getting nowhere. The weak shine of my phone's torch only aiding and illuminating just a few feet in front of me. I've worked here a little over a year, and I can tell you with utmost certainty that it takes only about 2 minutes to walk the length of the building at a brisk pace. Sure, I had been trepidatious to find the source of sound, so I may have been moving slower than I usually would, but it was getting ridiculous. I pushed on even when every fiber of my being told me to stop. Time moved weirdly now. Every movement I made felt slow and muted, like wading through a thick marsh, and no matter how long I walked, I never seemed to grow any closer to the back of the warehouse. In fact, the space ahead of me felt distorted and elongated, thinning almost to a point in the far distance. It continued on like this for what felt like a lifetime. Each footfall bouncing off the walls, adding to the pressure I could feel clutching at my skull. I began to regret my decision, and when I had all but convinced myself it was no longer worth it to keep going, a green hue sputtered and buzzed to life, beams splaying out across a wall that was not there moments ago. I glanced up, eyes fixating on a fire exit sign, hanging atop a freshly materialized back door. The light coming from the sign felt unnaturally bright in contrast to the rest of the room. The glow hummed in an almost nauseating way. twisting my stomach up in knots every time the electricity pulsed. It felt like I was being taunted, in some weird, fucked up way, but at least now I could see the back wall, which meant I was surely closer to the final aisle that branched off to the right of me. The scratching had been a persistent cacophony that grated on my eardrums, but now there was yet another noise. It sounded like someone was sniveling, as if they were desperately trying to hold back tears. I stopped dead in my tracks, muscles seizing in alarm at the very human sound emanating from somewhere above me. Isn't this what I had wanted? Some proof that I wasn't the only fucker left on the planet? But in that moment, I felt no relief. My skin grew clammy, a cold sweat building upon petrified skin. The grip I had on my phone tightened until I could feel the edges digging red divots in vulnerable skin, and with the best will in the world, I could not keep the stream of light from bouncing in trepidation as I lifted the torch higher. Above me was an endless tower of twisted metal. What was once an aligned and sturdy pallet rack was now looming over me, a massive concave shelving that folded over itself again and again, reaching impossible heights as though no ceiling existed anymore to prevent its growth as it stretched into the abyss. It groaned under its own weight, unstable and twitching as the crying grew louder. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My jaw swung open from the absurdity I was bearing witness to. Unsure, I reached a tentative hand out, fingers dancing along the rusted metal. Its orange drop flaked off gently at my touch, dancing momentarily in the air before descending slowly onto the ground in front of me. So different from when I had last locked eyes on the shelves. How new they had looked then, and how old they were now. Any stock that had been placed on the shelving was seemingly gone, and I watched on in disbelief as the tower in front of me swayed dangerously the further my gaze wandered up, and somewhere up there was a lone box, a large one that would typically be used to store large quantities of items. It was the only thing left on the racking, and the longer I stared the quicker I realized that the low moans and watery breath were coming from inside of it. Whatever was in there moved slightly, its body dragging against the thin material that confined it. The box was too high up for even the reach truck. There was also a very real chance that the vehicle wouldn't even work in the crazy-ass pocket dimension I found myself in. If I wanted to know what was up there, I was going to have to climb. Fuck that. No. I refuse then, and I refuse now as I sit here writing this. Climbing up that contorted pile of metal was exactly how I was going to die here if I tried, and who knows what fucking monstrosity is up there. So I ran. I had run as fast as my legs would carry me away from the sound and obtrusive mass that bent unnaturally higher and higher into what was now just a stretch of nothingness above me. This place was unraveling. Each passing hour seemed to distort different parts of the warehouse, and on my mad dash back toward the only place I felt any sort of comfort, my desk. It had taken me twice as long to clear the winding pathway back, and yet the wailing only grew louder, and my already dwindling sense of safety was slipping through my fingers yet again. So now here we are, 42 hours in, and I have no idea what to do. The Wi-Fi keeps dipping in and out, so I don't know if this will upload at all. I don't even know if there is anyone out there. Story 9. My husband and I bought a new house. Turns out we weren't the only ones living in it. When my husband, Ryan, and I bought our first house, we were thrilled. Our 5-year-old twins, Eliza and Noah, were bursting with excitement over moving somewhere bigger, and even our 6-month-old Joseph seemed to share their joy, gurgling and smiling in my arms. Ryan had spent the past week working on the place with his brother, unpacking furniture and setting up the bedrooms, so the move would be smoother and a bit of a surprise for us. For a split second, even I shared their happiness. But the moment the kids and I stepped inside for the second time, something shifted. The air felt heavier somehow, though the smell of pine sol and Febreze practically stuck to everything. I tried to ignore it and focus on my family instead, but it felt impossible. Ryan grinned, spreading his arms. Well, what do you think? Eliza gasped dramatically, twirling like a ballerina. It's beautiful. Can we have a dance floor? Noah darted past her, making a mad dash for stairs. No, dance floors suck. We need a racetrack. Ryan lunged just in time, scooping him up before his feet could even touch the stairs. Not so fast, speedster, he said with a laugh. No racing until we get settled. Eliza stuck her tongue out of Noah. Yeah, Noah, you just don't know how to dance. I know how to win, he shot back, wriggling free out of Ryan's arms with a grin. Their voices bounced off the ceiling that loomed high above the foyer as they made their way toward the living room, filling the empty space. Even though the house was already full of furniture, the sound echoed longer than it should, like the walls were repeating them a beat too late. I adjusted the straps of the carrier. Joseph was settled in and glanced up at the staircase. For a split second, I could have sworn I saw something move at the top landing, a shadow, maybe, or the way the light hit the banister. But when I blinked, it was gone. Ryan looked over his shoulder at me, still smiling. Hey, he said softly, you okay? I forced a small smile, just taking it all in. He nodded, stepping closer to press a quick kiss to my temple. Told you it'd feel like home. I'll be honest, at first I was thrilled with the fact we'd be moving to a bigger home, because we've been living in the same crappy 2-bedroom apartment since Ryan and I had started dating after college. It was fine back then, but with 2 toddlers and a baby, it started to feel less like a home and more like a shoebox with plumbing issues. I smiled, but my eyes drifted to the stairs again. The air up there seemed darker somehow, heavier, and even though the house looked perfect, I couldn't quite shake the feeling that it was waiting for something. I set the steaming dishes of baked ziti, the smell of garlic and cheese filling the air. Ryan poured the drinks, while the twins scrambled into their chairs, giggling and talking over each other. For a moment, everything almost felt normal, the clinking of forks, the extra noise, and the soft cooing sounds coming from Joseph in his high chair. I sat down, feeling the warmth of food rising against my face. I was starving. I was thinking, maybe tonight will be quiet, and maybe this house was as bad as I thought. This is incredible, Jane, Ryan said around mouthfuls of pasta. Tastes way better than anything we've ever cooked in our old apartment. Thanks, Ree, I replied, taking a bite out of my food, across the table. Eliza suddenly burst into giggles, the kind of laugh that didn't sound forced or nervous. It was bright, delighted, like she was being entertained. I smiled at her, lifting my wine glass. What's so funny, sweetheart? Eliza pointed past me, toward the hallway that led to the front door. The funny man, she said between giggles. He's making faces. Ryan paused mid-bite, his fork hovering in the air. What man? Eliza stopped laughing then, her expression softening into confusion. He was right there. She pointed again, this time slower. By the stairs. He looked funny. Noah craned his neck to look, frowning. There's no one there, Liza. My skin prickled. I turned in my chair, glancing at the hallway. Nothing but shadows. Just a faint light from the chandelier pooling against the wall. Ryan cleared his throat. Eliza, maybe you're seeing things. It's late. Eat your dinner. She nodded, but I noticed her shoulders stiffen as she lowered her gaze to her plate. Suddenly, Joseph started to smile and giggle at the hallway behind me, waving at something unseen. I scooped him up from his high chair, my stomach twisting. Who are you laughing at, huh? I asked him, half expecting an answer. His bright grin faltered, slipping away, so suddenly it sent chills down my spine. He was still glancing at the hallway, barely paying attention to his mashed carrots. I forced a laugh, put him back in his chair. I was going to cut through another bite of pasta, but the back of my neck tingled, because for a split second before I turned away, I could have sworn I saw it too. Something tall, something standing just beyond the light. After dinner, I carried Joseph up to his crib in the twins' room. His tiny fingers curled around mine as Ryan gave the twins quick showers, their yawns growing as they clutched their stuffed animals. When the kids were finally tucked in bed, Ryan switched off the hall light and gave me a reassuring smile. We crawled into bed, sheets cool and soft. The baby monitor's faint hum filled the room, its small screen glowing on the nightstand. It showed a good view of Joseph's crib and the twins' bunk bed. Yeah, I murmured, checking the monitor one more time. They're sound asleep. Ryan slipped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. You did good today, he whispered, leaning his head back against the headboard. I think this house might actually be a keeper. I leaned in closer, thinking about it for a moment, my hand on Ryan's bare chest. I let out a quiet sigh. He turned to look at me, the easy smile on his face fading. His blue eyes softened with concern, and his dark, black hair was still damp from a late-night shower. I hesitated. But what Jane? He asked gently, his voice low but laced with concern. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. I just can't shake the feeling that we're not alone here. Every time I step into a new room, it feels as if I'm intruding or interrupting something. I always have a sense that I'm being watched or there's something in the room with me. Ryan stayed quiet, his expression unreadable. So I went on, words tumbling out faster now. And it's not just me. The kids have noticed things too. At dinner, Eliza said she saw a man down the hall making faces at her. She thought it was funny, but when I looked, there was nothing there. And Joseph, he was giggling, staring at the same spot. I swear, for a second, I saw something move. Just a dark shape. Ryan shook his head with a reassuring smile. Jane, they're just kids. You know how wild their imaginations are, especially in a new place. And you've been stressed. I'm sure it's nothing. It's not just nothing, I said, glancing around. Suddenly, there was a cool breeze, way too cool for a warm August night. Goosebumps prickled along my skin. I didn't want to say it, but someone had to. I think this place might be haunted. Ryan chuckled. Okay, Jane, he said, kissing me on my forehead. I think it's time we go sleep. You've been on edge since we got here. I haven't been on edge. I shot back, though what he said was true. I crossed my arms trying to sound confident. It's called trusting your gut feeling. Ryan smiled faintly, though there was a trace of tired affection in his eyes. I get it. It's a new place. Everything feels different, but we're safe, okay? It's just the house setting. We'll get used to it. He kissed me once more, and we both said our goodnights and went to sleep. But I couldn't close my eyes at all. Somewhere downstairs there was something dragging along the kitchen floor, scraping against the wood. I must have been the only one to hear it, because the noise came when Ryan fell asleep. I told myself that it was the house settling, but it felt like a lie. When I opened my eyes again, the room was dark. My phone screen blinked beside me, reading 3:10 asterisk 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 asterisk. Must have fallen asleep at some point in the night. I wondered, but didn't think much of it. I closed my eyes to drift back to sleep, but they were already watery from a yawn. I picked up my phone from a nightstand and noticed I got a message that was sent at 3 on the dot by an unknown number. I unlocked my phone and clicked into iMessages. The number had the area code for Washington, which was where we were currently residing from California, so that meant this person was definitely here. I read the message, my eyes widening. You're dead. If you don't get out of our house soon, you'll never hear the end of it. My pulse quickened. What? I whispered to myself. I had no clue what the message meant, and whether it was a joke or not. Ryan and I were the official owners of the home now, and no one else was living in it other than us and the kids, right? As if knowing I'd just seen the message, the entity responded. I know you're reading this. Jane Wilder. Get out of our house now, or we'll make you leave. Goosebumps covered my skin as I kept staring at the message like I was suffering from a seizure. I was completely frozen in shock and worry. At that moment, there was a shrill scream down the hall. It sounded like one of the little girls. It wasn't Eliza's, that's for sure. It sounded childlike and demonic and distorted. Footsteps followed after. They came in a pair, one sounding like high heels hitting the floor, and one sounding like regular shoes slapping against the wood. They walked slowly, and I heard the twins and Joseph's room door open for a few seconds and then shut. My heart pounded as I frantically reached for the baby monitor on the nightstand. It had gotten turned off at some point in the night, which didn't normally happen. I shook it vigorously, hoping it turned on. Then the screen flickered, showing the feet of the kids sleeping. The twins were safe and sound on their bunk beds, and Joseph was asleep in his crib. It seemed like I had nothing to worry about until I noticed 3 dark figures standing in the corner. A man, a woman, and a little girl who looked to be about 6 years old. They dressed like it was the 1800s. The females wore long dresses. The man was wearing a brown suit with elbow patches and a fedora. The trio emerged in the corner and stood in the center of the room, watching the kids sleep. I was shaking. Their outlines were faint at first, as if the monitor was trying to fill them in, pixels struggling to keep up. They didn't look real. They looked faded and glowed with a blue hue. I wanted to convince myself it wasn't real, but I knew full well it was. I gulped, hearing the tune Rockabye Baby play out of nowhere eerily in the room. The man's head tilted slightly, and even though the image was grainy, I could still see the unnatural bend in his neck. The woman's long hair hung forward, hiding her face, and the small girl's hand twitched rapidly like she was waving or warning. Then, all at once, the screen started to glitch static, erupting again before the figures snapped back into view. They weren't human anymore. Their limbs had stretched, faces blurring into something distorted and hollow. The little girl's hair stood up straight like she was going to be electrocuted. Her eyes seemed to melt, dripping away until her face was left looking empty. Her head snapped backwards at an impossible angle, as her legs bent and reshaped into those of goats, her skin tightening against bone as if her flesh was being sucked away, like a vacuum picking up crackers. The woman's eyes fluttered rapidly, widening with every blink until they bulged, rimmed with blood-red veins. Her skin blackened, charred like burnt paper, while beside her, the man grew taller, still his head nearly brushing the ceiling, his face smoothed into nothingness. No nose or ears, beady eyes and a line too thin for a mouth. Horns split through his skull, sharp and glistening in the dim light. The group's fingers elongated next, stretching like strands of wax, curling into long, spidery talons. The woman opened her mouth and revealed a long, crimson-red tongue, viscous liquid that looked far too much like blood. My breath caught in my throat. The screen flickered again, and for a split second I swore I saw the girl's head twitch, jerking at an unnatural angle before the image dissolved into static. "Ryan," I whispered, shaking his shoulder. He stirred, groaning softly. "Jane, what's wrong?" "Wake up," I hissed, thrusting the baby monitor toward him. Look at this." Ryan sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What is it now?" "Just watch," I said, pressing the monitor into his hands. My pulse pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. The screen flickered again. Static crackled. And then there they were. 3 distorted figures standing by Joseph's crib, their shapes twisting and wrong. Faces blurred like they were being smeared across the screen. Ryan blinked hard, leaning in. What the hell? Before he could finish, the image jerked violently, the figures turning toward the camera in perfect unison. Then came the scream. It wasn't Joseph's. It wasn't human. It was a sharp, piercing cry that made my blood run cold. Ryan dropped the monitor on the floor, screen going black. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I whispered, my voice barely there, "That came from his room." Ryan's face went pale. He was already out of bed before I could breathe another word. Ryan pulled on his shirt and sweatpants, reached for the door first, his feet barely thudding softly against the hardwood floor. I followed close behind, my heart hammering in my chest so loud. I thought Ryan could hear it. He pushed the door open. The room was still. The dim night light glowed softly in the corner, casting a warm orange glow over Joseph's crib, and toys scattered all over the floor. Joseph was fast asleep, as if nothing had happened. Eliza and Noah were curled up in their beds, untouched and breathing evenly. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The only sound was the faint hum of the baby monitor still on the dresser, its green light blinking steadily. Ryan took a step inside, his voice low and rough. "Joseph?" No answer, just the soft rhythm of his breathing. Then I saw it, the air around the crib shimmered faintly, like heat rising from asphalt, before vanishing in an instant. "Ryan," I whispered, wrapping my robe tighter around my body. "Did you see?" "I saw it," he cut in, his voice tight. He turned to me, jaw clenched, eyes hard in the dim light. "Jane, get the kids." "What?" "Get the kids," he repeated, firmer this time. "We're getting out of here." I froze for half a heartbeat, staring at him. Ryan never panicked. He was calm through everything: flat tires, storms, even hospital trips. But now, his hand was shaking slightly where it rested on the crib rail. "Ryan," I began, but he shook his head. "Now, Jane." The tone in his voice snapped me into motion, and hurried over to Eliza on the top bunk and reached for Noah. My pulse thundered in my ears. The air felt colder by the second, even with my robe on, heavy with something I couldn't name. I wrapped the twins' blankets around them, cradling them both as best I could, then grabbed my phone from the nightstand and hurried downstairs. Eliza rubbed her eyes. "Mama, what's going on?" she asked, her small voice groggy. "Shoo," I whispered, trying to be calm. "We're just going for a drive." "But it's dark out," Noah mumbled, resting his head on my collarbone. "I know," I said, kissing his forehead. "It's just for tonight." I put the twins down and helped them into their shoes and shoved my bare feet into my sneakers, without caring whether I had socks on or not. I picked up the twins again and held them close. Ryan finally came downstairs, unbothered. Joseph tucked protectively in his car seat. His face was tense, jaw tight, eyes scanning the dark corners of the hallway as we made our way down the stairs. Halfway down, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied again. Eliza whimpered, clutching my robe. "Mama, I'm scared." "I know, baby," I murmured, my heart racing. "I am too." Ryan turned toward the front door, reaching for the knob. The house seemed to groan. A deep, low sound, like the wood itself was resisting. The door wouldn't budge. Ryan twisted harder, keys jangling in his hand. His jaw tightened. "It's stuck." A sharp chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean, stuck?" Then somewhere behind us came a soft, deliberate creak, like footsteps. The creak came again, closer this time. I turned, my breath catching my throat. At the top of the stairs stood three shapes, half-formed in the dim light. For a heartbeat, they looked human: a man, a woman, and a little girl, but their bodies flickered, their outlines wrong. The girl's head twitched sharply to the side, her arms hanging at strange, stiff angles. The man's shoulders stretched upward, too tall, his hands dangling low, fingers unnaturally long. Without hesitation, Ryan made attempts to kick the front door down, but it didn't work. Instead, the noise caused Joseph to cry in his car seat. The twins were crying into my chest, physically shaking from the sight. The figures came closer, bloodthirsty for more. "Ryan," I whispered, clutching the twins tighter. He looked up and froze. "Jane," he breathed. "Get to the car." The figures started down the stairs. Slow at first, then faster each step, echoing like a crack of thunder. Ryan yanked the front door hard. It flew open this time with a violent creak that made me jump. "Go!" he barked, shoving the door wide. I ran, bare feet pounding against the porch, the twins clinging to me, their muffled cries mixing with the pounding in my ears. The night air hit like ice as I stumbled toward the SUV parked in the driveway. Behind me, I heard the sound of wood splintering, the floorboards groaning under something that shouldn't exist. Ryan was right behind me, holding Joseph's car seat. "Get in," he shouted. I fumbled with the handle, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip it, until it finally gave way. Ryan thrust Joseph's car seat into my arms, and I hurriedly set the twins and the baby inside, my breath coming out in quick, uneven bursts. I scrambled in after them and slammed the door shut just as Ryan rounded the front of the SUV and dove into the driver's seat. Through the windshield, I saw them. The figures started to run forward at an impossible speed, all of them on all fours. They were after the car. Ryan drive. I cried. He turned the key. The engine sputtered once, then roared to life. The SUV shot backward down the gravel drive as the figures lurched forward, their movements jerky and wrong, like puppets with broken strings. For a moment, I thought they'd follow us down the road. But as soon as the tires hit the street, the shapes stopped frozen at the edge of the property, standing in the glare of the headlights. They just watched us go. Story 10. Does anyone else read way too many reviews before buying something, or is it just me? Like the title states, anytime I buy something, I always read the reviews first. It's the only way to know if it's any good. But as the enshittification of the internet progresses, these reviews are becoming less and less helpful. I mean, how honest are they going to be for a product named RI Bio-Collagen Real Deep Mask, Hydrogel Overnight Mask, Korean Skincare, stocking stuffers for girlfriend and wife? Like 0%. They're all bought to hell. Regardless, I do it anyways. I mean, there's got to be some real people reviewing this junk. It's better than buying something with 0 reviews or a bunch of negative ones. To preface this, I just moved into my first apartment last week. It's a bit scary knowing that I'm broke and only have the absolute basics: TV, entertainment stand, couch, bed, etc. But oh well, it is what it is. I'll just buy a little at a time until it's fully furnished and looking gorgeous. My goal is to eventually work my way up to the ultimate luxury, an espresso maker, LOL. First order of business is getting a toaster. Yes, a toaster. Call me weird, but I love toast. I've been eating it almost every day for breakfast since I was a kid. Any toast aficionado knows that the best way is butter only, no jam or jelly or anything weird like Marmite. So, yes, a toaster will be my first tree of many. I'll look on Amazon and find the first cheap toaster with somewhat decent reviews. 4.3 stars with 8K reviews isn't bad. Let's see what people are saying. Great toaster if you need something basic. $25 bucks and it works. Doug M. It toasts LOL. Secret_broil. Fantastic little appliance. Perfect for breakfast. Jeremy M. Good enough for me. I'll go ahead and get it. Should only be a few days until it arrives. Sure enough, a few days later, I get home from work and my package has arrived. Call me a nerd, but I am so excited for this thing. I might even have me a little late night toast excursion. I set the toaster up and what do you know, it doesn't work. I plugged it in, put my bread in, pulled the handle down and nothing. What a piece of shit. At least Amazon has a good return policy. That night, as I start the return process and begin looking for a new toaster, the busted one starts making a clicking sound. I'm talking loud too. Just click, 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 click. Drove me fucking nuts for a few minutes until I unplugged the thing. What's weird is that it was hot, and the lever wasn't pulled down either. But that's what you get for ordering some shit that was probably made for $2. I finally find a new one, something pretty similar, and at this point, I'm pretty irritated. So I don't even check the reviews this time. I just click buy, put my phone on the charger, brush my teeth, take off my makeup, and go to bed. As expected, another few days roll by, and I'm chilling on the couch when there's a single knock on my door. I open it and voila, new toaster. I still have to return the old one, but I'll do it later. I have 30 days. It's not like the one I have is haunted or anything. A week goes by and thankfully, I finally have my 3rd day off since moving in. At least this overtime is paying off. As I sit in my bedroom bed rotting, aka watching TikToks and eating chips all day, I look around and notice how bland my room is. I mean, fuck me, it looks like a dude's room. I need to get some color or something in here. Maybe an accent wall would be nice. So, I go on Home Depot's website and look at paint, exciting I know, and I'm thinking a nice pop of ocean blue would be perfect. But I don't want to get some crap with the paint flakes off. So, I find a brand and color I like, and of course I read the reviews. Beautiful color. Was exactly what I was looking for. The cottage has never looked better. Mary went on beautifully. Color was better than I expected too. Perfect for when you just need to liven a dreary room. Jeremy M. It's paint. What do you expect? The asterisk, 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 asterisk. Home Depot customer. All right, well, Home Depot customer sounds like a bit of an asshole, but I think I'll go with this one. I ordered in, what the fuck? A week? It's gonna take a week? That's some bullshit, but whatever, I guess. In the meantime, maybe I'll go on Etsy and get some cute new earrings too. I mean, I can't let my apartment's soon-to-be prettiness show me up. Again, I hear the clicking of the old toaster. Click, 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 click. I go to the kitchen and it's plugged in and it's hot, almost unbearably so. How the hell is that possible? Something is fucking weird here. I could have sworn that I unplugged it. I need to return this shit tomorrow. Regardless, I go back to my room and hop on Etsy. After only a few minutes, I find the cutest little silver snake earrings. I mean, they aren't everyone's cup of tea, but apparently I like reptiles in mine. Now, I bet you'll guess what's coming next. Cue dramatic music, the reviews. Got them for a friend's birthday. She loved them. Kirsten, talk about quality. I've been buying from Sam Slithers for a few years now, and they've never disappointed. 6 stars if I could. Goose Gobbler. Absolutely fantastic. Truly, I mean, why would you want your new apartment to be prettier than you? Jeremy M. What the fuck? What was that last comment? Who would say some shit like that? I look through my recent purchases on every website, and the same name keeps popping up. Jeremy M. Even with the second toaster I bought. He reviewed that. Great toaster, especially if your first one is on Fritz. The clicking drives me nuts. Jeremy M. This has to be some sort of fucked up coincidence. Out of total paranoia, I start looking up random items. Paper towel holders, vacuums, baby gates. Great for your first apartment out of college. Jeremy M. Ugh. If only it could vacuum by itself. Unfortunately, being a girl living alone, you have no choice but to do it yourself. Jeremy M. You'll never be able to use this, Jess. Why bother? Jeremy M. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? Who the hell is this? I go to the original review and click on Jeremy MS profile. They now have a profile picture, and it's me, sleeping in bed. But the worst part is the bio. It was my address and today's date, followed by the time, 8:50 p.m. It's 8:49 p.m. Before I can run, my closet door creaks open. Before me, there's a man that I've never seen before. I stop. I'm paralyzed with fear while this creep just stares at me. Clearly he's disturbed, but he does absolutely fuck all. I slowly inch my way toward the door until suddenly I feel a yank on my wrist. It's almost time. Don't you want to know what happens? I look over at the clock. Slowly, it ticks to 8:50 p.m. I rip my arm away and bolt toward the front exit. I open it, slam it behind me, and start running as quickly as I can. Now, after a mile or so and no trace of Jeremy M., I call the police. They come and search my apartment. But as you'd expect, nothing. Not even a trace. They didn't seem to care. Who knows if they even checked the cameras? What's the point of the police if they just show up to shoot the shit with each other? Useless. Anyways, I stayed with my parents for the next few nights. Soon after, my older brother moved in with me. Convenient for him since he's now closer to his job. Not convenient for me because he brought a bunch of junk with him. You know, it's been a while since the incident and things have returned to normalcy for the most part. Other than the other day, someone left a note taped to my door. Curious, I pulled it off and opened it. My heart dropped. Wow, beautiful apartment. And the guest policy is very gracious. 5 stars. Jeremy M.